My name is Guyo. I work with International Livestock Research Institute, and I coordinate a research program called Jameel Observatory for Food Security Early Action, which is basically a research that questions why we are approaching drought from reactive point. There is evolution in artificial intelligence. There is evolution in data, analytics models to project things, and etc. So this is where we founded our research, and some of my colleagues are here who are supporting with documentation. So back to your question, Mheshimiwa, I think we are researchers, and sometimes researchers ask very hard questions. The hard question is that at the beginning of our research, we did something interesting, looking at when did we start actually establishing our system for responding to drought. And that dates back to mid-1980s when the Turkana Rehabilitation Project was established, very much within the humanitarian space. And thereafter, there are a series of projects that we have established an initiative to respond to drought, very much project-based and not institutionally established. But I think we also observe as drought became a political and economic question, in 2011, through the initiative by Honorable Elmi and others, we have made a home for drought responses, which is NDMA. And that is one of the good progresses where I think now the EDE framework is established. But I think a framework is a framework. It will only support you if you enable all the pillars of the framework. I think there's history from the EDE 1.0, where we had a fantastic document, but then we couldn't mobilize resources, we couldn't establish all the things required for all the pillars, and now we are drafting EDE 2.0. And I guess with the lesson from 2.1. And one of the greatest issues is that two things actually. One is the financing. You can have fantastic framework, fantastic data early warning and bulletin without commensurate financing to unlock, because drought don't wait for you. Drought is a creeping phenomenon. So it has a very discernible pattern of 6 months. If you don't mobilize your resources to move with that, to enable systems to respond, then it doesn't work. The second, I think, we're also stuck with our systemic problem, institutionally. The systemic problem is that we're still responding to drought as we are doing almost 20 years ago. And the data from the UNCCD shows that the drought phenomena after 1960, 70% of drought is happening after 1960. And the most severe droughts are known to happen after the year 2000, which means we are not going back to the old good day. We're still facing unprecedented drought situation in future. But our system is not position or moving with the same gravity that the drought requires. So I think for EDE, I think it's a very good mobilizing framework, but I think we need to be serious in how do we enable each of the pillars of EDE through resourcing, not only financial, but the capacity. We don't have situation rooms to look at drought phenomena. Today, artificial intelligence can allow you to see things as they happen. And if you go to ICPAC offices, you see a lot in terms of situation rooms and infrastructure for observing drought in the Horn of Africa. We could domesticate that kind of processes in our own country to look at drought in a very different way. So I think those two issues need to change. And I think thirdly, the way we package our data and the way we convey cannot be trusted by anybody, neither is it understood by people affected by drought. So we need to have a better packaging and dissemination of data so that people understand and use them to destock, to sell the animals in a timely manner, and to do something more timely. And lastly, I think, on the sphere of the anticipatory action, which means actually, in our, Ending Drought Emergency Fund, the regulation is very clear that we're supposed to do something quite interesting, which is spending 50% of our money before the drought. But resources are not there. The fund has no money to allow us to do that. So all those issues have to change in the way we resource, the way we build capacity, and the way we are serious in terms of implementing all the pillars of the framework. Thank you.
Thank you. Just before, just one more question for you before I pass on to Honorable Memusi. Do you think, Dr. Guyo, do you think that the development partners, and I can see, of course, you also, run an NGO. The development partners were supposed to be key players in this field or in this space of drought management. There are accusations that they have not done well, or rather, they have not prioritized drought ending drought resilient programs. What is your take on that?
Thank you. I think the drought responses is the role of the government in terms of even establishing framework and also overseeing. I think the development partners, the best they can do is to align their resources to the priorities of the government, whether it's county or the national government. And I think resource being scarce, I think funding under the climate issues are also very, 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 very scarce. So I think for me, development partners need to be coordinated to align their resources and intervention to what government put as a priority. If the government is not in the driver's seat, then it will be hit and miss endeavor because people will put in money. I come from one of the largest county, which is Marsabit, and I've seen drought responses almost, number of NGOs have been increasing, but then the severity cannot allow those more resources, which are very much project approach. Project approach has a phase. It's just very short term, while government processes are long term. So I think for me, it's only fair to say development partners, they are very important players, but I think they have to be coordinated and their resources have to be aligned so that they complement what the county government or the national government is doing so that we have collectively responding to drought issue is not a single entity phenomena. And I think we need to capitalize on that. And I agree. I think even this gathering largely supported by development partners to have this conversation. So the policy makers and the policy holders, decision makers have to change their approach so that NGOs also are more accountable to the processes.